Hey, hope you're doing well. Andy here from Drive Steady, and today I'm reviewing this, a Mercedes EQB350, the first in a long line of all-electric SUVs coming from Mercedes. I'll be covering things on the interior, exterior, all of the battery-related tech such as range and charging, etc., etc., and of course, taking it for a quick drive. So let's get started with this review of the Mercedes-Benz EQB350. Okay, so before getting started, a big thank you to Keys Mercedes for giving me access to this EQB today. If you happen to be interested in one of these things or any other new or pre-owned Mercedes product, make sure you give them a call. I've left all of their information in the description below. Now, let's get started with just a quick note on the EQB. It's essentially the electric version of the gas-powered GLB. It's similar to what Mercedes does with the S-Class and the EQS, essentially an equivalent version, an electric equivalent version of a gas-powered car. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the trim levels and pricing for this EQB model. So you have two trim levels, at least for now, the EQB 300 and 350. The 300 starts at $54,500, the 350 at $58,040 for a difference of $3,540. So what does the 350 get you over the 300? Obviously a little bit more power, but less range, both the power and the range, which I'll talk about here in a minute. It also gets bigger wheels, 18s versus 19s, and the 350 wraps it up with a standard panorama sunroof. All right, so now let's talk about the exterior design and some of the changes the EQB gets. So you've got full LED headlamps and tail lamps, which feature the signature light bar going across, connecting them both in the front and in the rear. This is very similar to what you see in the EQS sedan. You lose that front grille because there's no need to cool an engine anymore. And check out the 19-inch wheels on this one. You've got a silver look plus the EQ blue theme mixed into it, which is rather cool if you ask me. And it's actually rather interesting because Mercedes hasn't really changed the EQB drastically compared to the GLB. As an EV car, it still looks like the gas-powered version, contrary to the EQS and the S-Class sedan. Those kind of really go in different directions and aim towards EV and gas-powered. Now, with that out of the way, let's switch gears and talk about the battery technology. All right, so now let's talk about the battery technology, and one really surprising note is the fact that I'm actually able to pop open the hood and see some of this battery technology. Generally, electric cars have a frunk because the batteries are all pretty much, or the motor is pretty much hidden, and the batteries are laid flat along the car. But not in this car, and again, rather surprising because within the EQ lineup, the EQS, you can't even open the hood in that car, unless you're a Mercedes certified technician. But nonetheless, this is actually pretty cool to be able to open it and see some of the battery tech. Speaking of the tech, so this has two motors. There's one in the front and one in the rear. In the EQB 300, the combined output is 225 horsepower and 288 pounds-feet of torque. In the EQB 350, like the one I have today, 288 horsepower and 384 pounds-feet of torque. Of course, it has a single-speed transmission. It is quite heavy, 4,718 pounds, very heavy, even for an SUV. For comparison's sake, the GLB 250, remember the gas-powered version of this car, weighs 1,000 pounds less than this thing. As far as the 0 to 60 time, 7 seconds for the 300, 6 seconds for the 350 like this one. Now, as far as the battery goes, it's a 70.5 kilowatt an hour battery, and it's built on a 400 volt architecture. And the nice thing about it is that Mercedes will warranty it up to 8 years. As far as range goes, in the 300 trim level, 243. If you go with the higher horsepower one, like this one, the 350, it drops it down to 227. All right, so you've drained your battery and you need some more juice in your EQB. let's talk about charging. So the charging port is back here on the passenger side, opens like so, and the connector is here, traditional connectors, the regular AC and the CCS DCS fast charger. And according to Mercedes, if you use a 240 volt outlet at home, it'll take you roughly 8 hours to charge from 10% to 100%. But if you decided to go with the DC fast charging route, it'll take you 32 minutes to go from 10% to 80%. But they're also sweetening the pot by giving all EQB owners a complimentary 30-minute charging session at any Electrify America charging station for 1 year. Now that's a pretty sweet deal. You don't have to pay for charging essentially for 1 year if you buy one of these things. So pretty good. Now let's switch over into the practicality features and talk about the trunk and then move on to the interior. All right, so now I made it to the rear of the EQB, and let's talk about trunk space. So the way you open this thing, there are 4 different methods. So there's a button on the interior, there's a button on the key, there's also this big Mercedes logo that if you have the key with you, you push on that and it'll electronically open the trunk, or there's the kicking motion you can use right underneath the license plate. So let's open this thing up and you'll be greeted with a surprisingly large amount of space. So when the rear seats are up, you have 22 cubic feet of space in the GLB, and this is one of the more surprising things on how much space this car actually has, or cargo space this car actually has. And then if you fold down the rear seats, that expands to 62 cubic feet of space. So you can fit a lot of stuff in the cargo area of your EQB. Now, one thing I do have to complain about, it's not really a big deal, but it would be nice to have. The rear seat folding function, you got to go into the car, the passenger compartment area, and lower it using a manual latch. It would have been nice if there was just a little switch here that I can push and the seats will just electronically release. Again, nitpicking item. I saw this in the X7 and in the GLS Mercedes, the 7-seater, and I just wish that all SUVs had that because it's an ultra convenient feature to have. It doesn't distract you from loading things into your car. So with the trunk out of the way, now let's jump onto the interior and I'll give you an idea of what it's like in there. All right, so now the interior of the EQB, and one note prior to giving you details about this thing, and that is that the interior of this car and the gas-powered GLB are identical dimensionally. Headroom, legroom, shoulder room, it's all the same. So the interior of this is the same size as the interior of the GLB. So some of the details of this thing, starting off with the quality and the design. So with quality, like most cars I review, there's good and the bad. So some of the good stuff, the air conditioning buttons are all metal. Metal is scattered all throughout. The air conditioning vents here, some of the trim pieces on the steering wheel and on the trackpad are metal. So that's the good. The bad, there's obviously plastic in here. The lower part of the dash is literally all plastic. This armrest area is covered in this faux leather hard plastic here in the center area, but I think that's to be expected. One of the other nice things, the entire dash is soft touch, which is actually surprising. Generally, it's very hard touch plastic, and in here, it's soft touch. And then this trim piece here with a diamond looking pattern looks pretty cool as well. Now, as far as the design goes, I would say it's really nicely done. The 2 screens are integrated very nicely into the dash portion here. The air conditioning vents, I like the way they look. The overall design of it is very simple, modern, and has a nice balance of classic Mercedes-Benz interiors. Now, as far as comfort and sizing in here, starting off with sizing. So I'm 5'11", and you can see I have plenty of headroom above me, and I sit really nicely here. I don't feel like there would be a shortage of space for an individual larger than me sitting in this front seat. As far as the front cabin area, it's not the biggest, but I would say it's more than adequate. And one big bonus for the EQB, and this comes from the GLB as well, is that it can seat up to 7 passengers. So this car doesn't have it, but you can get two seats in the back cargo area. Now you sacrifice some cargo space, but you can seat up to 7 people in your EQB. So as far as the comfort goes, this is a very comfortable seat. I like sitting in it. It is not aggressive. It is tuned more for daily driving. There are no bolstering and any of that stuff. So it's a nice, comfortable seat. And I've triggered the Mercedes, hey Mercedes type of infotainment system. So I think that's a good segue into the technology and the infotainment system. So you've got two 10.25-inch screens in this car. One of them is the gauge cluster, and it gives you a lot of information up there. And then to the right of that, you have the actual infotainment system, and this is the MBUX system that I like a lot. I've used this thing a lot. I've experienced it a lot, and it's very, very nice to use. Easy to use, very short learning curve. The graphics are nice. It's touchscreen. It has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and it's just a fantastic system in this EQB. It's also great in all the other Mercedes products. And now finishing off the front here with some of the amenities, you do have the panorama sunroof that I mentioned earlier. As far as charging ports go, you have 3 up here and 2 in the back, so 5 total. More than adequate for your charging needs, and that's always important. Now, one thing that I have to ding the EQB for, and I saw this in the GLB35, which is an AMG car, it doesn't have keyless entry as standard. So you have to take your key out of your pocket, push the button, and then get in the car, and it does have start stop once you're in the car. But I find it quite ridiculous that a car that starts at a base price of $50,000 or $53,000 or $54,000 in this 350, and you don't have keyless entry. Some economy cars, well, not some, pretty much most economy cars now come with keyless entry and go. So I think Mercedes really needs to put that in here as standard. So that's pretty much it on the front, and now let's go to the rear and I'll show you what it's like over there. All right, so now the back seat of the EQB, and let's jump right into the real estate, or essentially how much room I've got back here. So I sit back here quite comfortably. My head is not, or my hair is not touching the ceiling. I've got, I would say, about an inch or 2 of room on top of me, and the overall width, I would say, 2 people obviously would fit in here comfortably. A third individual my size might be a little bit of a squeeze. 3 children would be just fine in here. As far as legroom, you can see that I have plenty of legroom, and one of the surprising things that I saw in the GLB35, and it obviously continues here in the EQB, is that there are many different adjustments for these back seats. So you can bring them forward and backward, you can do this motion, you can also tug on the little strap here that lowers the back seats, and you can move the back seat back and kind of have this lounging position. So it's actually quite surprising that the EQB has these features and this level of adjustability in the back seat. So really, really nice. Then you've got the armrest with 2 cup holders here, so that's to be expected. And the charging ports are right here. So you've got 2 USB Type-C outlets, and if you wanted, this is the optional 6th outlet that I didn't mention up front, and there is a 115 volt plug here. So if you had a laptop, or if you had the head of your charger, you actually wanted to plug it in here, you can certainly do that. So no shortage of charging ports in the EQB, and that is a double thumbs up for me, because charging is very, very important now, especially for your backseat passengers. And having 3 ports here, you've got everybody covered. So that's pretty much it on the interior. I would say this is a really nice interior. There's some surprising elements to it, because number one, you can seat 7 people in here, and you certainly wouldn't say that when you look at the car's size from the outside. The adjustability in these back seats is an additional bonus that not many cars have, EV or not, and then more expensive than this, less expensive than this. The charging capabilities, the 2 screens that you get in the 350 package, and the overall design of it, the layout is actually very, very nice and modern. So with that out of the way, now let's go to the driving portion of the review and see what this thing feels like behind the wheel. All right, so now the driving portion of the review. And as always, where's my key? This is what the key looks like. Just a simple Mercedes key, actually more plastic than I'm used to seeing on this generation of Mercedes keys, but nonetheless, it is what it is. As far as visibility go, it's fantastic. I do have blind spot monitoring out the back is good. I have a 180-degree camera out there. The front does not have a camera, but there is a 360-degree parking sensor, which gives you this nice net as far as protection from hitting obstacles and whatnot. Now, the visibility is just really good. The way you sit overall is good as well. You do have a really nice SUV-like driving position, even though the EQB doesn't sit up extremely high. So as far as the price goes, this car is equipped, or well equipped, $63,430. So quite a bit of options in this GLB 350, and definitely not a cheap little electric SUV. So now that's out of the way, let's go ahead and take this thing for a quick ride. Put it in D. Car's already on. The beauty of these electric cars, you don't have to turn them on, or there is no ignition sound or anything to let you know that your car's on, other than it just saying that it's on. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put it immediately in Sport, because I do have a straight stretch of road, and let's see how it feels. Okay, pretty good. Moves pretty good. Loses steam maybe around the 50-mile-an-hour range, but general acceleration is very good. I would not imagine this having any issues merging onto the highway, passing people, whether in the city or on the highway speed. So no issues as far as the speed goes. Granted, yes, this is not some AMG level car, but it does get up and go because it has that all-wheel drive system for 4MATIC, and it's electric. So that torque from zero helps immensely. As an example, 35 miles an hour, mash it, it really gets up and goes. So that 0 to 60 time of 6 seconds in this 350, don't pay much attention to that. I think this is more than adequate to use on a daily basis. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back into comfort mode, and I want to talk about the brake regen. So there are 3 different modes of brake regen in this car. There's D-, which is the strongest mode. There's D, which is the normal mode, and then there's D+, which is the least aggressive brake recuperation. I would think it would be the other way around, and D+ would be the most aggressive, but no, apparently Mercedes doesn't think that way. But anyway, let me tell you what it feels. So D+ is actually really nice. For somebody who's coming into a car or into an EV car who's not used to brake recuperation, this is really nice. I'm going to give you an example here. Foot off the gas, and it feels like a traditional automatic gas-powered car. Then when I go into D normal, or just regular D, I definitely feel the brake recuperation. And for those folks out there who are a little bit more experienced with EV cars and like to one-pedal drive, I think this is really nice. It's tuned really well. You can definitely do the one pedal, so foot off the gas. This thing is slowing down really nicely. Obviously, it requires a bit of timing to get the one pedal driving expertise down, but I think it's tuned nicely. Now, when you put it in D-, my foot positioning on the throttle didn't move, and when I put it in D-, I could immediately feel that the brake recuperation kicked in. So it's that strong, not moving the throttle pedal. So let me give you an example. Foot off the brake now, and it really pulls you forward and slows you down very aggressively. One more example. There's almost like a little bit of a lag. It's about a second, and then it really starts slowing down. Foot off, and now it's slowing down. All right, so that's the brake recuperation. As far as the steering and the suspension goes, the suspension is actually very comfortable. This is well suited for daily driving. Very, very comfortable. Even on bumpy roads, this thing is soaking it up nicely. Check your expectation. This is not going to be like some S-Class level ride, but it's actually very good for the price point. As far as the steering goes, there's a decent amount of weight in it. So if you like a nice firm steering wheel, this is quite common in Mercedes cars where the steering feel is quite firm. Even in the comfort mode, you do get some decent feedback, or weight feedback is basically not there. It's a pretty numb steering wheel. But if you like weight in your steering wheel and firmness, I think this is really nice. And then when you put it in sport, and you can tune your steering feedback to sport and all the other throttle response and all those other things down to normal, just in case you wanted a really, really firm and weighted wheel, and the sport mode will give you that. Now, finally, the brakes. So the brakes are a little squishy to my taste. I wish they had a little bit more bite at the top of the pedal, but it's definitely suited for a daily driver. Now, so what is this thing? I think this is a really nice electric car. It feels nice to drive. It feels relatively large for being such a small SUV. And the speed is more than adequate on a daily basis. You have plenty of storage room in the back, and just overall in the car, the technology is good with the 10-inch screens. You can seat up to 7 people, which I think is the biggest bonus of this car. Now, one of the things I said that was very head-scratching is the fact that it doesn't have keyless entry, and I think that's such a shame for a car that had $63,000. And if you really wanted to argue, putting aside the keyless entry, the thing that you could argue against this car is that it's quite expensive. So when you look at the GLB, the gas-powered version, it's significantly cheaper than even the lowest model of this car, the EQB350. So if you're price conscious, it all depends. Do you want this EV theme? These EV cars do ride much quieter than the gas power car. They're obviously environmentally friendly, but otherwise you're going to get a lot of the same features. Interior dimensions are exactly the same. Exterior dimensions are mostly the same. So go out, drive one of these things, see how you feel. If you're price conscious, then you may want to lean more towards the GLB. If you really want the EV experience, you've got the whole infrastructure, charging at home, near close by DC fast chargers and whatnot. The EV card, the EQB, may make sense for you. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram at DriveSteady. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.